All right. It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Scott Carbonara. Scott's nearly 30 jobs since his first paper route when he was 8 years old, but he has spent much of his last 25 years practicing just one calling. He challenges people to imagine and create better lives for themselves and those around them. Scott is known as the leadership therapist, as he draws on his diverse background as an award-winning family therapist in the state of Michigan before transitioning into corporate America, where he served as executive chief of staff for a multi-billion-dollar company. Today, he's an international speaker and management consulting specializing in leadership. He is also the author of 4 books, including A Manager's Guide to Employee Engagement and ghostwriting for several other authors. Throughout all his work, Scott aims to bring authentic leadership to life from the boardroom to the family room. Welcome, Scott.
Thanks, Beth. Morning, everyone. I know you've been sitting a lot the last couple days, so let me just summarize that introduction in case you lost it, because there's been a lot crammed in here. I want to focus on that line, bringing authentic leadership to life from the boardroom to the family room. My marketing person brought me this line and said, I think you should use this when you're introduced to different groups. And I said, yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. It sounds really cheesy and made up, kind of pretentious. And she said, I don't care, just do it. Well, since my marketing person is also my wife, I said yes. And the first time it was used was about 8 years ago. I am in Alabama, and there are 850 HR leaders in the room. All the vendors and sponsors are around the room. So in total, there are about 1,000 people. The woman got up there. She hadn't read the introduction beforehand. And as she started reading, she announced to the entire group that I would be bringing authentic leadership to life from the boardroom to the bedroom. I don't even know what the hell that means, but I got a standing ovation, so that's pretty good. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to be talking about the subject of engagement. My background was in crisis counseling, and then it was in corporate America. And I understood some things about engagement from the perspective of, we didn't even have a term called employee engagement that everyone hears all the time now. At the time, we just called it, please don't quit. We were having a lot of turnover, and we were trying to figure out why and what can we do to stop it. So let me give you a little bit of idea of my background. I started off as a crisis counselor right out of college. I'm in a group home, and I'm living with 8 to 12 juveniles, and I am caring for them as I live in the home with them. Now let me say that again. When I was 21 years old, the age when many of you were still mastering the fine art of beer pong, I was the legal guardian to a gaggle of delinquents. Now, does that sound a little scary? Looking back now, the scariest thing is that I didn't have the common sense or life experience to be scared, as I should have. And then one night, an 18-year-old boy who was a little bit taller than me, he whispered in my ear at bedtime, he said, I could kill you in your sleep. And then 2 weeks later, he tried. And I realized something, that engagement, even when you're trying to help people, if they're not part of it, they're going to resist. After I worked with kids, I started to work in crisis counseling. I would go into the home where a crisis had occurred. These are families that you might see on the nightly news. I had a woman who put her toddler in a kennel so she could go out to the bars at night. I had a man who used his infant as an ashtray. I had a man who gathered up all 6 of his children into the kitchen after school one day, and he said, I want to show you something. And he grabbed a shotgun, and he took his life in front of his children. People were not engaged in the life they had or in the roles they had, even when it came to being their own children. So there was some struggles with engaging people in that role. And for all of them, I hope that they might end up in jail instead of prison, or prison instead of a graveyard. those are the type of families I worked with. So eventually I made my way to corporate America. I worked for HCSC, not a household name, but the last year I was there, it was ranked number 52 out of revenue generating companies in the US. Disney was ranked number 53 of that same year. It's a parent company of Blue Cross Blue Shield of, insert state here, Illinois, Texas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Montana, etc. I started off in HR. After HR, when I was in HR, the vice president called me over and said, operations, our biggest division, it is about 60% of all of our employee base. We are having turnover in the customer service arena. Now, at the time, we called it a customer service department, but our division was actually called Subscriber Services Division. Subscriber, a very archaic name, but it was set in place so that we would never forget that these people are willingly subscribing to our service. Were we the cheapest? Absolutely not. But as far as a service and a product, our differentiator, we believed that if people would continue to subscribe to us, and we had a high persistency rating, which is how it's measured in insurance, then we must have the best place in the world, both for our members and for our employees as well. Well, the vice president called me in and said, we have terrible turnover in the customer service arena. And he said, so we want to institute a pay-to-stay program. So if a customer service rep stayed a whole quarter, we'd give them a little extra money. 2 quarters, a little extra, 3 quarters, that's so forth and so forth. So I said, so you know why it is people are leaving. You've determined it's about the money. He said, oh yeah, I've talked to all the managers of where these people keep quitting, and they told us the same thing. Competition has come into our area. We're not offering them enough money. So that's why we're losing them. He said, so also do a comp analysis and find out if we're paying people in the areas where we do business, and it's a competitive wage. And I said, okay. And then the hallmark of my whole HR career, which was brief but glorious, is I didn't bother asking anyone. I thought I would just do something on my own. And I wanted to validate, is that really why people were leaving? So I had the guy in HRIC run the list. I had 250 plus names, and I started calling people at home who had voluntarily left the job. And I asked them, hi, my name is Scott. I'm from Blue Cross Blue Shield of, insert state name here. And I want to make this the best possible place to work. What can you tell me about your experiences with us? And here's what they told me. It was a sweatshop with air conditioning. I cried all the way to work and all the way home from work every day. I told my husband I wouldn't talk about this job anymore because it nearly broke up our marriage. If only they treated us like we were human. Or I'll tell you what I told the local talk radio station. Friends don't let friends work for, insert our company's name here. You can't pay for that kind of advertising. You can't actually pay to suppress that kind of word of mouth advertising from your employees, because employees are backyard ambassadors. Every time they meet with friends or family and someone says, where do you work? They have an opportunity to talk about you specifically, about where it is you work, and about how they feel about that work. So having gathered my information, I went to the guy who would become my boss for the next 15 years, and I said, I ran some SAS data, and I did some phone calls, and here's what it says, and he took it, because he was real anal. He really knew numbers well, and he looked at it, and he said, okay, so it looks like we're treating people like crap. And I said, yeah, that's the short of it. He said, so what are we going to do to fix it? Well, over the next 18 months, that became my job. I took that division of a customer, member-facing people, I took it from 38% to less than 6.5%. And I did it by focusing on the people, focusing on their leaders, focusing on the head leaders over their whole departments. And we were able to change it together. And now I'm no longer there, obviously. I have an opportunity to do what I love. I'm a speaker, consultant. I write books. Since COVID, I've been ghostwriting tons of leadership books and memoirs, and I find I really enjoy that as well. But it gives me an opportunity to interact with folks like you that understand that the member is everything. But before the member can be everything, that means to you, your employees are everything. And it means that you must know how to care for yourselves, because if you don't care for yourselves, who is? So I want to hit all three of those. Engaging yourself, it starts with you. Engaging your employees, it continues on to them. And engaging your members, because that's where you actually see the retention and you actually see the love and the loyalty and the relationships start to take off. Here's what blocks engagement. I'll tell you how I heard it. It's an outside-in perspective. Perhaps it's an apocryphal tale, but there's a guy named Walt. Walt's been married to the same woman for nearly 60 years. His wife, Martha, says, "Honey, I'm going to the store. Do you need anything?" And he said, "No, I'm fine. Just go." She said, "Okay, well, I'll be right back." She gets into the car and she realizes she forgot her little coupon booklet. So she comes back in the house and she sees that her husband is sitting in the same chair, but he's crying and he doesn't want her to see. So he's trying to wipe his eyes and cover up his tracks. She runs over to him and she said, "Walt, what's wrong?" He said, "Nothing's wrong. Just go to the store. I'm fine. I'm just thinking." And she said, "I've known you for too long. If you're sitting here thinking and crying, there's something terribly wrong with you. Either you tell me or I'm calling for help." And he said, "Fine, I'll tell you. I was sitting here and I was thinking when we first got married. We didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. We bought this old house. We fixed it up the best way we could. And you never left my side." He said, "Then I lost my job." You remember those days. We didn't know what we would do. But every morning when I awoke, yours was the first face I saw. And then we decided to cash in our savings, our retirement, get a second mortgage on the house, and we built our own business, and we worked it together side by side for 7 years until the economy shifted, and once again we lost everything. And every night before I fell asleep, your face was the last face I saw. And so now more years have passed. I'm starting to lose my hair, my hearing, and my health. And so I was thinking, and now his voice cracks, and his wife has tears pouring down her face. And she said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "I'm beginning to think you might be bad luck." Now, you can certainly see where he came up with that conclusion. You know, that's pretty obvious. But you know what he could have said is, "You're actually the reason I still got any life left in me at all. You're the only reason I'm still kicking." But see, that's the opportunity of perspective, right? So how many of us will say, "I could engage if only"? What does that mean? If only we had a different governor, a different president. If only I worked at a different place, had a nicer home, nicer car, married better, decided not to have all of these kids that are running around my house. Whatever the it is, you say, "I could engage if this somehow goes away." And I'll tell you that engagement starts here, it starts now, and it starts with you. There's nothing out there that's going to change. The change is right here in this room. So I want to change perspectives. For this, it's going to require a little bit of activity, so I'm going to have you stand up if you would. I don't want you to get too comfortable. Don't want you to fall asleep. This is real simple, not terribly strenuous at all, I promise. I want you to take your index finger, and I want you to point to the ceiling above your head. And then I want you to look at the tip of your finger. Okay, good. You're all doing it. Now, I want you to start rotating that finger in a clockwise circle about the size of a basketball right above your head, and keep your eyes right there on the tip of your finger. Good. All right, good. Now, I want you to lower it while you continue to spin it so it's right above your eyes, and keep your eyes focused on the tip of your finger. Now, this is where it could get challenging, so don't get lost. I want you to keep spinning that finger, and then I want you to drop it to your chest level. And now that finger is tracing the sides of your face, and while you're looking at the tip of your finger, I want you to answer this question. Is that finger still going clockwise? Okay, this is the remedial group. Let's start this again. Point to the... What changed? The only thing that changes your perspective, and you don't always have an opportunity to change your circumstances, the situation you find yourself in, but you always have an opportunity to change your perspective. So let's practice that. Before you sit down, I want you to find a partner. And I want you to have a quick conversation with your partner. I want you to say, you know, based on where I see the future heading, and that's a very nebulous, by design question. Based on where the future is heading, here's what I'm thinking, and if I had a concern, it would be, and to be honest, this makes me feel what? When you're in the listening role, I want you to say just 3 words. I hear you. That's it. I'm going to yell switch, so after you are done talking about these three things, and the other person says, I hear you, then switch. Go. Okay, if you haven't already done so, switch. When you both had a chance to have your conversation and be heard, have a seat so I know that you're done. All right, have a seat when you're done. Now, there are a couple reasons I wanted to start off with this exercise, but honestly, the number one is a lot of times when people first start this exercise, the first thing they're doing is saying, how the hell did he do that? And you're still trying, how many of you were doing that? Still trying to figure out the finger thing? Yeah, a lot. Ask your kids, they'll get it right away. But there are some points we can learn from this simple exercise. One, you just improved your mental health. I believe that we would need fewer counselors, fewer medications, maybe even fewer bartenders if we did a better job of listening to people and talking to people and sharing our burdens by being able to unload in a safe place. Tied to that is, hearing doesn't mean fixing. Now, if you're in a relationship, you probably understand the difference. When your partner comes up to you and says, I have a problem, they are not asking you to own the problem. They are asking you to hear the problem. And my wife did a great job with this when we were first married. She said, I want to talk to you about an issue I'm having. And I said, okay. And I'm thinking to myself, I was an award-winning counselor. Let me show you, I can fix you in like 3 minutes flat. Oh boy, that was the wrong mindset to go into that. No one wants to be fixed. Dogs, cats, but I mean people. People don't want to be fixed, right? Don't try to fix me. So she started talking. When she was done, I said, okay, here's what I would do. Boom, 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 boom. And she didn't look as thrilled as I thought she would be from hearing sage wisdom from an award-winning crisis counselor. Instead, she said, okay, thanks, and then she left. Now, the next time she talked to me, she pre-taught me, like you do with a little toddler when you're going into the grocery store and you don't want them grabbing crap at the checkout line and throwing cookies and candy in. So she pre-taught me and said, I just want to talk to you about an issue I'm having. I don't want you to do anything. I just want you to listen. Can you do that? And I'm like, okay, thank you. This time I lasted about 3 minutes before I launched into fixing her. Through the years, I've gotten much better. We as leaders don't like to know that problems exist without us jumping in and fixing it. Am I right? People constantly are bringing you problems, and you're like, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to deal with it. You're used to that. That's your job. You tell yourself, that's why I get paid the big bucks. But the reality of it is, you can listen to someone without owning their problem or even agreeing with them that there is a problem. And the final one is, a trouble shared is a trouble halved. There's that catharsis that happens when you talk to someone in the industry, someone who gets what you're going through, and they don't try to offer you, well, here's how I dealt with that. Instead, they just say, I hear you. I know. So I've been talking a lot about engagement. Let me define it. Some people need definitions. I'll put it up there in case you do. But essentially, If you see someone practicing these 6 traits, these behaviors, you know that you're looking at a highly engaged person. Now, you might look at it and say happiness. Well, that's cheap. Yes, and it's true, you could promote happiness pretty quickly if you did it superficially. Like, for example, if Beth handed out tequila bottles instead of wine, we could say, okay, when all those bottles of tequila are empty, you can go home. You might be happy until you were hungover. It's not sustainable, it's not healthy, it's not going to make you a better person, a better leader. It's not going to change anything. That's not the kind of happiness I'm talking about. I'm talking about the happiness that's on the inside and it shoots out of a person. Can you think of an employee right now that whenever you walk past them, they exude that kind of enthusiasm? We really want a whole team of those type of people. Happiness is how I learned it when I first moved from the Midwest to North Carolina, where I live now. I consulted with a hospice group, and I was consulting with them and doing focus groups and interviews, and I said, who is the most engaged employee here? Because I really wanted to know who's got it and what can we learn from that person. And everyone told me the same name. It's Mary, the receptionist. Mary. Have you ever seen Mary when you come in the morning? She's full of smiles. It doesn't matter if you're an employee, if you're a vendor, if you're a family member, if you're a patient, the way she treats people is like, how's your mom and them? There is sincerity, there's warmth. So when I found out it was Mary, I told the boss of the whole place, I said, we really need to study Mary. Mary's got it going on. Everyone says, it doesn't matter what kind of day you're coming into each day. When you see Mary, you feel wonderful. You feel like you had just met someone who thinks you're the coolest person in the world. Pay attention, because that's how every employee wants to be greeted. That's how every member wants to be greeted, as if there is no one else out there but you. So when Mary found out that I was talking about her behind her back, she said, Scott, Peter told me, and I just have to say, bless your heart. Now, being from the Midwest, I thought that was a compliment at first. What does it really mean? You're an idiot, right? Now, from the Midwest, we have a different code. When we think someone's an idiot, we're a little less subtle. Do you know what we say? You're an idiot. Yeah, it's right out there. But Mary was blessing my heart, and so don't be blessing my heart afterwards. I'm not here to bless your heart. But Mary was happy, and she had the rest of these traits, which means she didn't look at the clock. She looked at her job as an opportunity to serve others. And if I had more time, I'd go into every one of those, but I don't. So let me just say this. I want you to put on your own mask first. Every time you fly, you see this, because if you don't, you're going to die, and then you can't help anyone else. And if you get to that point at work, what's going to happen is you're going to burn out. And some people have burned out. Okay, and burnout takes 2 different forms. One, you burn out and you leave. You say, I can't do this anymore. I'm stressed all the time. I'm going to leave the job. The problem is you go with you. See, the customer service reps that I talked to who left and took other jobs, the problem was they went with them. Their expectations went with them, their hopes and dreams went with them, and some of the same problems they had went with them. So instead of getting rid of people and hoping that they would land well, we decided to fix the culture. Now, if you burn out and leave, you're going to miss out on the people that you really do enjoy and you love spending time with, and they're going to miss out on you. But burnout can take another, even darker place, and that is when people decide to burn out and stay. And that looks something like this. You know, in case of an emergency, you're like, get the hell away from me. I got mine. I'm not jumping in here. The problem is then you become road warriors, retired on active duty. You're just hanging in there to get another paycheck until, how many days until retirement lasts? Right? At this point, you might as well go work for the DMV, because your soul has left your body, right? There's no good left in you. So what I want to suggest to you is, if you have all the things I'm going to talk about, great. Keep it up. It's hard to do. I teach this all the time, and I need this lesson all the time. Secondly, if you have it all, great. I want you to focus and intend on giving it to someone else today, this week, before the month is out. So let's jump in. I want you to know, by the way, you see the number 6 here, and clearly, unless you were sleeping, you probably missed the first 5. What I wanted to do is I wanted to move the order around, and I did this just minutes ago. So let me ask you this. How well do you know your employees? From a a leadership development organization really focusing on employee engagement, they found that these 10 things engage employees. All 10 of them are important. But what do you think the most important one is? Pardon? Work-life balance? Relationship with supervisor? Appreciation of their work? Job security? Free lattes? Here's what the survey said, and it wasn't even close. It was appreciation for their work. I worked with gang members. Why do kids join gangs? Because they want to be dead or in prison by the time they're 20? No, because they want to belong to something bigger than themselves. They want to feel that sense of belonging. Many of them didn't have it at their home. They might not have had it at school, so they go to where they feel like they belong. And you can't love people, and you can't make them feel like they belong unless you really know them. So, you have a handout in front of you. Can I see your handout here? Thank you. Flip it over. It looks something like this. This is a little game called People Bingo. So I'm going to have you jump up. You know how bingo is. It's 5 in a row. So all I'm going to ask you to do is to, whatever your strategy is, I want you to find from the people in this room someone who could initial to say, yep, that's me. I can answer that question. When you have 5 in a row, I don't want you to scream bingo. I want you to establish eye contact with me like, yep, I won. That's it. Take 5 minutes. Go. Whatever your strategy is. Clarification, it needs to be signed by someone other than you, and people can only sign once. Minutes left. What's that?
I just want to get them in a row, right? Like that?
That's it. You nailed it. One more minute. Okay, time's up. Have a seat. Five across. All right, let's debrief this. As always, the questions mean absolutely nothing. My background is a behavioral psychologist, so what I'm looking for is behaviors. And here's what I observed. Y'all had your own different strategies. For the most part, when I said go, y'all went, what? Like you weren't listening to the instructions, and it showed on your faces. You were like, wait, what? Are we supposed to go somewhere or do what? No, what did he say? And then you're looking at the paper to see if there are any instructions, and then you're looking up here. How many of you did that? Just be honest. Raise your hands. Okay, good. One honest person, 2 or 3 people. Okay, good. Secondly, some of you never left your chairs. You know who you are. Your strategy was that of the spider web. Like you send it out, and you just wait for people to walk by, and you're like, hey, come here. What do you got? You got anything I can use here? And some of you then, you moved, you migrated to a small group of people, and then you pumped them dry, right? I'm going to get as many signatures from you 3 people. That's all I'm talking to. I am not crossing the aisle. That would be like lava floor, right? And some of you just started running all over the room. How many of you actually finished it with 5 in a row? Raise your hands. How many of you established eye contact with me by doing this? Okay, a couple, but how many did it only after they yelled, bingo, I got it, I won? But I clearly told you not to yell out bingo. I said, just look at me. Is it possible that you yelled bingo because you were excited to be done with this very important life-changing game? Is that what it was? I mean, because did you think there was a prize involved? Because there wasn't, okay? No prize. So why did you do it? You got excited. And then I saw some of you got bingo, and you sat right back down. It's like one and done. That's like you tell an employee, I want you to move all of the chairs in this room over here and set them all up. And they do, and you come in, and they're sitting on one of the chairs. Like, I finished what you said. Oh my gosh, do I have to tell you to chew your food and then say, okay, chew it again. No, one more chew. Now you can try to swallow it. No. What you want is someone who takes initiative, and I saw some people who won the game who continued to help other people around them. Isn't that what you want your employees to do? Not just the task that was assigned, but you want to understand the heart of it. How can you love people if you don't really know them? And once you know them, you have a responsibility and an obligation to love them in the way they want to be loved. And this is a really simple example. When I've done this before with groups, they have told me, I know more about the people I just did this exercise with than I do my own employees. And some of them said, if our employees knew our members this well, we'd never struggle with retention, ever. Why? Because it's a relationship. It's not a transaction. Now, the real number 1. Tip number 2 in this case is always have something positive to look forward to. Yes, ironically, I know there's an ashtray there, right? Back in the days when I smoked, I would tell anyone who would listen to me that I was more productive because I smoked. See, here's my rationale. I have 10 things on my to-do list, and once I finish those 10, and only then, I will step outside for a light, refreshing, slightly carcinogenic cigarette. That was my treat, my carrot, right? Now, it's not actually true that smoking makes you more productive. But what it does is when you have something to look forward to, it motivates you to hurry up and get done, but get done. That's the reinforcing message. My wife, she uses M&Ms, and she's not a big sweet eater, but when she gets something done on her to-do list that was hard, she will take an M&M and she will suck on it, which I don't even pretend to understand, but she will suck on it. And that's her little cookie. That's her little reward. Always have something to look forward to. I've worked with a lot of hospice and home care groups, and I know dozens of stories about people who outlived their expiration dates because they're waiting for the birth of a child or a grandchild. So we know that there are more deaths in the winter months, and you could say, well, in the Northern Hemisphere, it's colder, right? The days are shorter, so they lose hope. Well, that might be true, but it also happens across the world, because in a lot of the world, there are big celebrations and family gatherings around the winter holidays, aren't there? So you have Thanksgiving. A lot of families get together. You then have Christmas, or you have Hanukkah. You have people getting together. Passover, people are getting together. When's the next time people get together? What holiday? Easter. Yeah, you mean you don't have big family potlucks for Valentine's Day? No, you don't. And that's a long time to wait, going from Christmas to Easter. But they found that it's statistically significant that people can wait for something anticipatory like this. They can hold on because they're full of joy for that moment and they want to be part of it. They've done the same test with something as simple as people planting little sunflowers in a thing of dirt and then watching it and watering it every day and having it by the window. And it's like once the flower has grown, people will say, that was fun, I want to plant another one. It's constantly, perpetually having something to look forward to. A couple of university studies did this. They called in some subjects and they said, we want you to spend 10 minutes thinking about your favorite movie. They had all these machines hooked up to their brains. They were monitoring all parts of their system. And what they found is while people thought about watching their most favorite movies, they increased their endorphin levels by up to 29%. Endorphins are, of course, those happy chemicals. They make you feel good about yourself. They lighten your mood. They actually improve your problem-solving skills. Not watching your most favorite movie, but just thinking about it. So what we understand in research now is something as simple as anticipating watching your most favorite movie. That can spike your endorphin levels. Running, getting your heart rate up, some cardiovascular exercise, 20 minutes a day, that releases endorphins. That also makes you happier. Hot and spicy foods. If you eat food so hot and spicy, it streaks down your scalp, it burns your face, you're doing it right, that releases happy chemicals. Sex also releases happy chemicals. Now, I'm not suggesting you could do all 4 of those at work and keep your job. But if you can, you might want to keep that job, because those jobs don't exist anymore, right? All right, I'm going to hell for that, I know. But the point is, while you might not be able to do all of these, no one is going to stop you from stopping for a moment and thinking about something on the horizon that you're anticipating. The best leaders I know understand that if you like, say, Rocky Road's ice cream, you don't wait for someone to stock it and put it in your freezer. You stock it yourselves. So how can you prime your own pump with positive anticipation? And it could be something small. It could be starting your day with a cup of coffee. It could be ending your week sharing a bottle of wine with a friend. It's just up to your ability to schedule the event and then have the event and then schedule another one. My wife and I do this with date night. Are you familiar with the concept of date night? You talk and you say, we don't do anything together anymore. It's all been about kids and pets and all work and stuff. We need to schedule date night, so then you schedule it. And then probably an hour and a half into your date night, you start to relax. About 3-4 hours in, you start to remember why you liked your spouse. And then 5 or 6 hours in, you're like, we need to do this again. So you pull out your calendars and you look 6 months out and you say, we're going to do it in 6 months if we need to or not. No, see, first of all, if you don't schedule, that doesn't happen. But too many times we put things on the horizon and say, I'm going to Rome in 2025. You know what? That's too far away to make a whole lot of difference in your situation right now. But what is in front of you that you can look forward to that makes you excited? So what I'm going to do is give you an opportunity to do just that. With a partner, I want you to pretend that you were a dog. What would make your tail wag? So it can be something that you're looking forward to today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. Have that quick conversation about something that you are so looking forward to that it can pull you through some of the tough moments between now and then. Go, have your conversation. for Mike. Yeah, I'm going to ask. Thanks. Okay, let's bring it back together. Let's bring it back together. Based on the conversation you just had, I have a live mic. Who has something you want to share? What is it that you're looking forward to? Come on, don't be scared of this. It's not going to hurt you. Something you're looking forward to. Back here. Just one. But the one thing you're most looking forward to.
Most looking forward to this weekend. My eldest son turns 16, and I don't have to drive him everywhere anymore.
But you do have to pay $10,000 more a month for life insurance, health, driving insurance. I just went through the same thing. Who's got another one? What are you looking forward to?
Next week, we're going to the Detroit Lions at Kansas City football game. Yay.
Woo, nice. Very cool. Who's got one? Who's got one? Right here.
I'm looking forward to going to Europe in October.
Awesome. Where are you going?
Switzerland, Italy, Croatia.
Nice. Very nice. Croatia is on our bucket list. Just had some friends get back from there. Now I want you to think about this in a work setting. Thank you. You can shut this off. I'm done with it. Imagine if you knew something like this about all of your employees. And imagine if all of your employees knew things like this about all of their members. And imagine how cool it would be if not only did they ask the question, what is it that you're looking forward to, but then they looped back. I had a boss, my first boss in corporate America in HR. She asked me on Friday before the weekend started, after my first week, she said, so we got any plans with the kiddos this weekend? I said, yeah, I'm going to go to this water park they've been talking about. She said, you're going to love it. My kids love that one. I can't wait to hear about it. Which is just like a social thing to say. It's sort of like when you say, hey, how you doing? Do you really think someone is going to sit there and say, well, I have bunions, and if you've ever had bunions, you know how. No. Yeah, you do know people like that, and I'll talk with how to deal with them later. But it's kind of a social nicety. That's what I thought, at least, until Monday. You know what the first thing she asked me was? How did your kids like that water park? So what she did was she not only asked me, what is it that you're looking forward to, but then she said, how was that thing that you were looking forward to? So imagine if the next meeting you all have, someone says, what did you think of Croatia? What did you think of the football game? I know your team lost, but no, I'm just kidding, just picking fights. And people will say this, they'll say they're looking forward to all of these amazing things, and as soon as we get overwhelmed, we forget about it, and we start focusing on all the spots on the lens of the camera, right? And we're like, well, this is dirty, this is dirty, this is dirty. We can't see beyond this to get to that, the positive, the pleasant. So as a leader, what is it that you're looking forward to? What is it that your employees are looking forward to? How do you have that conversation? And how do you loop back so that you keep that in mind so that you can love them and know them even better? Number two is this. Be careful who you rub up against, because they're going to rub off on you. Do this with your hands real quickly. Now, you're probably not aware of this because you live in Florida, but in the rest of the world where they have cold temperatures, this creates heat, right? It's friction. It's pretty well known. Again, you don't need to do that in Florida. You have plenty of it already. There's a word that this comes from. Diatribo is the Greek word that is when one thing rubs up against the other, both are forever changed. It has the context of a mentor-protege relationship, that two things come together and both are forever changed. And we mean it in a positive way. But in the English language, most of our emotive words are negative. Tired, sad, angry, frustrated, mean. We have negative words, so we turn this word, diatribo, which is positive, into diatribe, which is like when you rub someone the wrong way and then you get heated. You get really hot. Let me talk about this point, though, using something from pop culture of the 80s. How many of you have seen the movie Scarface? You know, I think I have the wrong remote. That's probably why. Do you remember this movie, Al Pacino? Who has not seen this movie? Okay. Now you guys have something to look forward to. Go home and rent this. Rent this, like how old am I, right? You know, I can go to Blockbuster, you know, see what's going on there. Anyway, if you haven't seen the movie, here's all you need to know. It is a movie with gratuitous violence, the glorification of the Miami drug culture, the generous dropping of the F-bomb. That's all you really need to know. I was in high school when this movie came out. My buddy Gary, we got into his car and he said, "What did you think?" And I said, "That was effing awesome." He said, "Effing A," and I said, "Let's go get some effing food." And we kept talking like effing that until we got back to my effing house. And then my mom asked me an effing question, and what do you think came out of my mouth? And my mom knocked me into next Thursday, which she well should have. I was not raised in an F-friendly home. Okay, I didn't attend an F-friendly church. But what happened is, in the course of that movie, 206 F-bombs rubbed up against my ears. That's one F-bomb every 29 seconds, and I was nearly forever effing changed. That's my mom introduced me to Tabasco sauce, which is still one of my favorite endorphins to this day. Be careful who you rub up against. They rub off on you. I hired this creative genius from my team, and I said, "How was your weekend?" Thinking I'm just going to get to know him, and he's like, "Oh, it was too short." And I found out whatever I would say to him, it would come back with a similar answer. "How was Disney? Did your kids like it?" "Oh, it's too expensive." "How was," he said, "a beer is like $20. Like, "How was your back? I know you were hurting." He's like, "Oh, just don't get old." And I started thinking to myself, you know what? Life is too short to rub up against someone like that. Do you know someone like that where if they had a theme song for their life, it would be womp womp? If you're not nodding your head, it's probably you, okay? I'm just saying, because you hide in plain sight, right? You'd be the last one to know. But everyone else, when you leave the room, they're like, whew. So this guy, always, wah, 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 wah. And I'm in the middle of a merger. I am busier than I had any right to be. And I realized I can't walk to my office that way because I'm going to run into him and he's going to look at me with those sad eyes and I'm going to have to ask, "What happened? Did someone pass away?" And he's going to like, "No, they canceled my favorite show on TV." And I just don't have time for that. So I walked another way to my office and I saw this employee, Meredith. Meredith always had a look on her face like she had just done something slightly illegal. Like Meredith, what? So I'd walk all the way back to the window and I'm like, "Meredith, what are you messing with me for?" She said, "I'm just teasing you. How are things going? How's the merger? What can I help you with? How is your family?" And I'd spend like 10 minutes with her and I'd realize I'm late to my next meeting, but I also realized that 10 minutes with Meredith just let my soul feel so much lighter. I felt like we had a great relationship. I felt closer to her. In fact, after 6 months working in Chicago, I let her work from home out of St. Louis, keeping her same salary because she just was such a positive influence on the team. Even when she wasn't there, she'd pick up the phone, she'd email. Rubbing up against her made people feel great. How can you be a Meredith to someone else? How can you transform people like that? And you know, it's easy to say, well, that's just, you know, it's simple stuff. Well, when I was in college, I worked for a credit card company. I did incoming calls. People were calling. It's one call after another, which is where I started to develop a lot of love and empathy for people in the customer service arena. I had a supervisor there named Dolores. I came in one day, and I had just started, and she was so good to me. She'd stop by my desk. I remember that first day, and she did this, like, don't hang up, but just don't take the next call. This is early technology. So I got off the phone, and she said, "Sweetie, how are they treating you?" And she just, like, rubbed my back. And this was back in the day. Don't be looking at me like that. Dolores was a sweetie. There was nothing creepy at all going on there. But she would say, "How's your week at school? What are they teaching you?" And then toward the end of that little conversation, she said, "I'm going to tell you something, but don't repeat it or I'll deny it." And she put her wrinkled lips against my ear and she said, "But you're my favorite." Now, do you think I was really her favorite? Don't shake your head. No, of course I was. She's an honest woman. I don't know. I think she was just that way with everyone. An older Southern woman. She just seemed to have that spirit. And I didn't think it mattered to me until I came in when I was sick. And I'm working my shift, and about halfway through the night, I go to the desk and I say, where's Dolores? I haven't seen her. They said, oh, she called in sick. And I'm like, well, what the hell am I doing here? It's like I'm in my mid-20s. It's like I'm not sending my report card to my mom to put on the refrigerator anymore. I mean, I'm doing it for myself. But I still realized, even though I'm a professional, I'm in grad school, this woman's 2 little minutes out of the night always meant so much to me. Do you know you're the Dolores for people around you every single day, and you might not even know it? And your people are Dolores's for some of your members and some of your own other employees, and you might not even know it. How can you be the person that transforms others for the good just by spending a few minutes with you? You also have to realize that you have the ability to attract more of into your life what you need. Most importantly is you get to repel things. Now, that doesn't mean you always get a chance to decide who you get to work for, who you get to serve, but it does mean you can decide where and when you're going to invest your emotional energy. So if it's a bad time, then you say it's a bad time. Someone is always complaining, you can say, hey, I really would love to talk with you about this further. Why don't we talk about 5 o'clock tonight? If you do it around quitting time, people will be a lot less likely to bring you problems. But if you really want to hear it, you schedule it around your convenience, not theirs. Develop a mantra. I learned this the hard way before I realized there was some math and science behind it. I was in Dallas all day. I drove to Wichita Falls, Texas, and I got this is the old BlackBerry, the RIM pager. Remember those things? You're all thumbs, little one-line screen. I got a text from my boss saying, come to Dallas, breakfast, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. It wasn't a question, wasn't a conversation. And with text, you can never really read tone. Like, what does he mean by that? So then I had dinner with this management team I supported. And I got back to my room and I started fretting full time about my boss. He wants to see me. And I started thinking, well, what would you think? What would you think if your boss wanted to see you and sent you some really abstract message? Let me put it in a different time frame for you. You're back in high school and there's a crackle on the intercom in the class you're sitting in, and someone says, excuse me, would you please send insert name here to the office, please? What's your first thought? What did I do? Or what did they find out that I did? You're thinking one of those type of things because you're making an assumption, and that's exactly what I did. I checked into the hotel, I got into my room, and I wasn't sure if I should go back that night or if I should wait until the morning. I decided I'm just going to stay here. I'm too nervous. I got to get some rest. And I started watching TV. And what happens is, like, when you're already stressed, your mind keeps going back to the negative. It's called a negativity bias. Our minds reset to the most negative thing that's happened. And so that's what we're thinking about. And I'm just thinking about all the worst case scenarios out there. So I put on Law and Order. It's always best when you're stressed and worried to watch something murdery. That'll take your mind off your life, right? So I put it on, and my mind kept wandering. I kept looking away. And then I decided, you know what, I got to stop this. I got to catch myself mentally before I accept the narrative. Shut the TV off for a while, and I realized I had a little light on my phone. Back in the day, that's when you'd have to call into the system and you'd get your messages. Remember that? It's kind of like your own little voicemail, but for your phone. And the message said something like this: hi, sweetie, I'm glad you made it. I hope your trip is going well. I can't wait to hear about it. Love you. Kiss, kiss. And I got to say, that made me feel kind of creepy, because I wasn't in a relationship with anyone at the time. Like, I don't know I left the door open all night. I did my part, but no one showed up. But I just thought, how cool is that? I have two narratives I get to decide between. I'm doomed, I'm about to be canned, or you're going to do great, and I can't wait to hear about it. This is the one I wanted to hear. You're going to do great, don't worry about it. So I got up and I started putting post-notes around the TV with little messages for myself, like, I want to be inspired, I want to be happy, I want to get it out of my mind. Eventually I fell asleep. Long story short, my boss was meeting with me because he was promoting me. And when I got there, he pushed a piece of paper across the table and he said, this is the salary I'm offering you. You'll see that it's going to require a lot more from you because it's making a lot more. And I was just like, oh. And he said, you weren't worried, were you? And I'm like, no. You know when your voice goes up like that? It means I'm lying, right? I was worried. And I say, well, no, I thought you would, at least buy me a good meal before you fired me. But yeah, I was a little concerned. And this became a thing. A couple weeks later, I found in the store markers that wrote on glass and mirrors. I started traveling with them. And whenever I go someplace to speak, the night before, I leave little messages on the bathroom mirror for myself. And when I wake up and I get out of the shower and I'm looking in the mirror to shave, I'm looking at these notes and saying, yeah, that's the kind of day I'm going to have. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do today. And I know that I left a note to myself, but I needed a mantra to lift me up and to keep me focused on this and you instead of being scared and nervous and worried. And, even if it's not scientifically valid, and it is, I'm going to keep doing it because right now, I swear, there's probably a housekeeper back in my hotel room looking at the mirror saying, what the hell went on in here last night? Just because they're looking at all these comments like, hey, I'm all like, yay, excitement. Well, I keep writing my own mantra until I find one that works for me. And I would say, be careful about the mantra you tell yourself and the mantra you tell others because you're going to end up believing it. A couple different university studies involving Asian women. They called Asian women volunteers into a room and the proctor said, we have a 30-minute timed test. It's math. And then the proctor said, it just dawned on me that you're all women. Well, no one expects you to do as well at math as men, so just, do your best. Go. In the very next room, the proctor said, it's 30 minutes, it's timed, it's math. But the proctor said something different. This time the proctor said, it just occurred to me that you're all Asian. Everyone expects that Asians do better than non-Asians in math, so prove them right. Go. Which group do you think tested better? The second group. See, some people like the challenge of, you underestimate me, let me show you. But most people, when you prime it, and all of a sudden you tell them, I know you can and here's why, you will rise up to the level of those expectations. So it's not surprising that the second group outperformed the first group. What's that? Well, yes, it's because they were reminded of the Asian part, not the female part, right? But how many times do we give compliments or try to build people up, but what we say is just left of center? You throw well for a girl. Okay, wait, let's just back that one up. See, we think these mantras, we say these mantras, but mantras can pull us forward. So let me ask you, in a room this size, I'm going to just make an educated guess that there's someone here, either that struggles with addictions or you have a family member or a loved one that struggles with addictions. You either have a sick child or a sick parent that you're caring for, so you have 2 full-time jobs. You might be going through a relationship breakup. You might have some illness that you haven't shared with anyone else. So I know in this room there is someone who needs a special mantra to get you through wherever it is that you are today. What mantra do you need? Secondly is this, what mantra do your members need? And it starts with, what are you telling your employees? I did this in a couple of different organizations where we created a mantra, and then we had all employees, leaders started using the mantra, and pretty soon that mantra went and it became something that the members themselves were repeating because they heard it so many times when they were at the property. What mantra do you think your people need to hear? This is the world's largest Tiffany stained glass dome. It's in Chicago. It's in what formerly Chicago Public Library, now it's Chicago Cultural Arts Center. I was lying on the floor, I took my family to see it, and even a really cloudy day, it was vibrant. That's just the quality of the stained glass made it so it popped. So I called this Be the Light. And after I took this picture, I printed a copy, put it in a frame, and I gave it to this healthcare group I was working with, happened to be a hospice group. And I asked them to think about, in what way can you be the light for the people you serve? Well, I heard the next month when I went back, and I would go there every month. They had a reading of the names, and people would, the leader would get up and read the names of all the people in hospice who had passed away during the previous month, and there were a lot of names. And I was struck by how people were serious, and they listened carefully, and there was a soberness and a genuine love they had for the people they cared for. One woman at the meeting got up and said, I was really upset after the last meeting because I was thinking, I'm just a CNA. What can I possibly do for anyone? Do you know what a CNA does? Like a nurse, but not. And by not, I mean because the nurses are always telling them, you're just a CNA, you're not a nurse. You know, you're sponge baths, you do all these little things. But the reality is CNAs spend way more time with patients than nurses do. But they're constantly being told, get back in your box. And so this woman said, I started thinking, I'm just a CNA, what can I possibly do? And then she said, no, I decided I'm not gonna let that stop me. So I thought about Edna. Edna was on her caseload, someone that she had grown to love. She was terminally ill, didn't have long to go, and she thought, you know what, I know that Edna, I love her, I sit with her, she tells me stories, and I knew that she was a lifelong Atlanta Braves fan. So I reached out to the Braves and I said, Edna is your lifelong fan. Can you do something for her just to tell her you love her? That's kind of an odd request. 3 days later, a package came overnight. It was from the Atlanta Braves, and it included a tomahawk, a baseball, a poster. It had a little note that said, Edna, we understand you're our biggest fan. Well, we are your biggest fan, and we are dedicating our very next game to you. Little personal note. Little stuff, didn't cost the organization a whole lot. And then the CNA posted the picture of this woman wearing this oversized jersey, holding the tomahawk, and her smile was the most beautiful smile I had ever seen. Why? Because she felt loved. So I would challenge it that it wasn't just a CNA that reached out to just the Atlanta Braves, because probably that CNA reached out to just a college intern working in the PR department, and neither one of them thought, well, I am just a anything. They both felt empowered to do the right thing, to care for someone when there's no way it could come back to them. It was just doing the right thing and a loving and caring thing. How do you recognize your employees who do that sort of thing for your members all the time? And to do it in such a way that everyone wants to be part of the story. Everyone wanted to know an Edna. And everyone wanted to say, I'm going to go that extra mile and I'm going to be the light no matter what. Find 3 good things. As I mentioned earlier, we're primed negativity bias. It means our brains are essentially Teflon for the positive things we hear, and they're Velcro for the negative things we hear. The negative sticks to us, but we just don't remember the positive things. So at the end of the day, where 90% of things go swimmingly well, we go home and we're drained by the 10% that we brought home with us. It's called a reticular activating system. It's a little like a file folder for your mind. The more you think about something, the more your mind can easily retrieve it. So it's like if you play a lot of cards, you might go to bed at night and you're thinking about cards, right? Anything you think about, it's there. If I were to ask you to stand on a corner and count every blue car over the period of an hour, you'd probably come very close to the number of blue cars. But if I then were to ask you, what about the white cars, you would be clueless, because that's not what you were looking for. Similarly, look for the good things, the things you really want to see, instead of the things that you hope to avoid. Make sense? Years ago, part of what my team did is we handled large meetings. We would have a couple thousand of our leaders in the organization come in twice a year for leadership training. Right before we got to Dallas for one of those meetings, heavy rains had come in and flooded the ballroom, the the women's room right outside the ballroom. So I'm thinking we have probably 85% of our population was female, and I'm like, how are we going to take a quick break and get that many people in and out of a bathroom and come back on time? It's not going to work. So I said to my managers, you're smart people, you'll figure it out. Just let me know what I can tell them when the meeting starts. About 15 minutes later, my phone rang. It was one of my leaders, and she said, come to the men's room. Got it all figured out. So I went to the men's room, and where it had said men's room, it now said women's room. Men's room downstairs. And I said, oh, okay, all right, yeah. You know when your voice goes up like that? It means it's not great, because women are going to walk in there, and what are they going to see? You can't not see that, right? It's right there, literally in your face. And she saw my face, and she said, no, I know what you're thinking. She grabbed my hand, and she walked me in, and she was so pleased with herself to show me this. Ta-da! Between my team and the hotel staff, they decided they were going to change the spray of flowers between every single break. Women were getting their pictures taken kneeling down by the flowers, which proves they had no idea what those really were, or they would have not had their faces anywhere near it. This became what people talked about during the whole conference. One of my vice presidents that night said, Scott, that whole thing with the bathroom and the flowers, that was hilarious. Did you come up with this, you and your team? And I said, yes. Last night I sent the rains. Tonight, locusts. I'm not God, right? I can't send like a plague. But what I could do is I could prime the positivity pump by constantly asking my people to look for an opportunity to take things up the next level. What can you do to take something that maybe doesn't work at all and turn it into something that's memorable and even positive? And that's why my team came up with it. So I would encourage you with this. There are 3 times a day you need to prime your own positivity pump. The first thing is start your day in the shower or having a cup of coffee. What are the things you hope to see that day? And then I want you to be a fierce investigator to find them. Do you see someone going above and beyond? Do you see someone having a very friendly conversation with a member where if you didn't know any better, these people live right next to each other and they're best buddies? What is the behavior you want to see? Tell yourself that's what you're going to look for during the day instead of problems. Now, someone mentioned earlier, you do have some people that are want in your life. Be known as the person throughout the day that asks this question, what's going well? What's going well? It's innocuous. It gives people wide open. But I'll tell you what, people have been conditioned to bring problems. Like I'm sure you have employees that'll come in and say, guess what? The server's down. Guess what? We're out of such and such. And it's like they're a cat bringing you a dead mouse. Like, bring me something I can use here. What am I going to do with this? But they've been conditioned that if they bring you problems, they get your attention. Imagine being the person that says, great, thanks for letting me know that, but let me ask you this before we get into that. What's going well today for you? See, a lot of people who complain don't know they're complaining. What they have to do is they have to be confronted with an alternative. And I started doing this within my team. And what I found is when I started asking what's going well, people wanted to go first in meetings because they wanted to share victories with the rest of the team so that everyone could feel good about it. And that's how you make the tipping point between people are now giving more because they care more. That's engagement. Finally, end your day expressing gratitude to God, your cat, your journal, your spouse. Discuss it somewhere. So many times we go to bed and we have insomnia. Why? Because we're worried about all the things we didn't get done on that day, and then we're concerned that we're not going to get them done tomorrow either. So, how can you end your night thinking, what was the highlight of my day? My wife and I do this. We started by calling it a demon-free zone. Within an hour before bed, this is not a time to watch something murdery. This is not a time to talk about stressful stuff. This is a time to sit there and read David Sedaris, watch a comedy, or just talk about our days and what we got done. And what that does is when I lie down in bed, I don't need Ambien any longer. What I now do is I feel like I'm kind of embraced as I fall asleep to say, that was awesome, that worked out really well, I'm looking for a repeat tomorrow, and then I can get to sleep without all the worry and stress. Last point is this, you know this guy, what's his name? Ed Sullivan, really big show. He was on from the late 50s to the early 70s. Even though he was well known, Time magazine wrote about him in the early 50s. It said he's got the face of a man sucking a fish. Now that, I think, was kind of code for he ain't the most attractive person. Did you know he had been a boxer before he went on TV? So he had been punched in the kisser a whole bunch of times. It didn't bother him that not everyone thought he was adorable. But one woman got under her skin. Her name was Harriet Van Horn. She wrote for something that evolved into become the TV Guide. And she wrote about him. She said, Ed Sullivan got where he is not by having a personality, but by being devoid of a personality. Which is kind of harsh. You know, it's kind of a mean-spirited thing to say. Now, if you're thinking about this, when you're a celebrity and everyone knows you, you can write an op-ed piece, you can go on your TV show, and you could toast the person who criticized you. You could scream at them. There are a whole bunch of options, but you know what? I like to think that he was a man of class. And what he did is he had the personal touch. Went back to his office, and I can picture this, the desk of Ed Sullivan. He took out his pen and he wrote, "Dear Miss Van Horn," and then he penned these poignant words. Now, I know this looks insulting, right? I know this looks like a nasty gram, and I can get that. And if you think it's a nasty gram, then don't laugh at it, that's fine. But it wasn't a nasty gram, and here's how I know. Because Harriet Van Horn said this was the beginning of a relationship that lasted the next 23 years until he died. This was her favorite possession from him. She framed it, she kept it on her wall. It was his way of saying, you got your thing, I got mine, stay in your lane, let's be friends. And that was that. Okay, so again, don't be writing letters like this to members or employees. Don't even be sending emails about this, because again, context could be lost. And I'm explaining the context, right? But that could look like a nasty gram, and we don't want any lawsuits. But this is something that kind of made me think, it's not important that you try to be funny or that you try to laugh people. It's that you create an environment where there's goodwill, where people feel like they could laugh at any moment. You know, when we think of people, and they ask this all the time, of men and women, what is the most attractive thing you find in other people? It's that sense of humor. It's that ability to laugh. It's that willingness to laugh with other people. It's not necessarily about being personally funny. But your job as a leader is to promote the environment where people can get to know each other and get to be comfortable with one another so they can laugh. Engagement. It's looking at others like they matter, because they really do. See, this guy here, he's single. You know, and if you look at it, you can tell he's single. He's looking in the mirror, right? He's doing this with his hair. You can see him testing his breath. This guy is trying to go from single to, you know, maybe an upgrade as it's complicated or in a relationship. Now, this guy, if you look at the picture, there are some clues that he's married. And he's not looking at himself, clearly, right? But he's also not looking at anyone else. He's looking at, this is what I got, this is who I am, and this is what I'm doing. But this couple, they're engaged. Where's he looking? At her. Do you know why he's smiling? Because she's smiling. He's gotten out of himself, and he's there for her. You know, when they say happy wife, happy life, it sounds like kind of a quasi-good quote and insulting quote. But the research says it's true. But it's also true, happy husband, happy wife, because when people are simpatico, when people are working to lift up the other, to build up the other, everyone walks away a little happier. This guy is happy because she's happy. He's got his eyes on the right thing. And the right thing for you might think, is to look out for your members. You're one person. How many members do you have? Can you get around to all of them every day? Can you make the rounds? I'm sure you do, but can you really get around to all of them? No, it's much better to say, I can get around to my employees every week during the month, and I can inspire them to be the light for the members that we have the opportunity to serve. And I'll end with this. I love Maya Angelou. I love her writing. And I love what she said, that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Every time you enter a room, people have a certain feeling. That feeling is not just based on you entering the room now, it's based on the history of times that you've entered the room and how people felt as a result of it. So if you think of just one thing, what is it that you want your employees to feel when they come in? And what is it that you want them to make your members feel? That is your shortcut to finding out how to love the people that you have an opportunity to serve alongside of. If you think in terms of serving others as an honor instead of being something where you feel subjected, it's an honor to serve others, then you're working and serving besides one another and having an opportunity to do something you believe in. It's how you make people feel. So, quick recap. You can't love your people unless you know your people. That's kind of a basic. So anything you do to get to know your people. And that bingo thing, yeah, I've done lots of things like that. They're called icebreakers, and I hate them as much as you do. But what they do is allow people to get to know one another in a non-threatening way. Also, rub up against the right people. There are people in your organization that you spend 2 minutes with, it's like you were just given a 20-minute break. They just lifted you up, you felt calmer, you felt more settled. There are also people that after like a short elevator ride with them, you're like, just get me off. This is way too long. Decide who you rub up against with and how you interact with them. Develop a mantra that personally helps you wherever you are right now in your life, but also one that you would love to have all of your employees repeat to your members every single day. You would love it to be, our place is known for the place where this happens, where we do this, where we feel this, where we aspire to this. Focus on what's working, not what's broken. Find 3 good things. Be known as the leader who goes around asking people, what's going all right for you? What's going all right for you? What's the highlight of your day so far? Expect people to have highlights of their day. Instead of looking around for things that are broken, have them look around for things that are going really well. And finally, keep your sense of humor. Even when I was a crisis counselor, dealing with a lot of death, dealing with a lot of sadness, I would always have to own my own attitude between clients, where I'd have to go someplace, I'd have to get settled, I'd have to think very clearly, because while I might not have done a good job with the last client, I mean, maybe they're not ready for it. You can't help everyone. Not everyone wants to be helped, but I could then get ready for the next person and give them my full attention with no less love and empathy. I know you guys have a long travel. Some of you just go next door. Some of you go a little bit further away. I'll be here if you have any questions or comments, but reach out to me, email me, connect with me on Facebook. If you have any questions, comments, recipes, whatever, just reach out to me. I'm generous with my time, and I would love to be able to help you if you have like a special need that I could address. And with that, I am excited to turn it back to Beth. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Scott. We appreciate you being here.